fishing and hunting, to me, is more than just a leisure activity or recreational activity. It's actually a way of life. It really is. It becomes a way of life. When I was about 7 years old, my granddaddy owned a farm in Bullock County, and he built a pond, a 6-acre pond. And that's where I first started fishing, in that little pond out there. And you know, I was, like I say, about 7 years old, and it was quite an adventure for me. But when I got a little bit older, we got more daring, and we started fishing in a creek that was near there. And I remember as a child, we'd go down to the creek bridge and sit in the afternoons and fish with a cane pulled off that old wooden bridge. And probably that was some of the best fishing times I ever had, to be honest with you. We'd catch little old warmouths and cuffies and speckled perch and butter cats and all kinds of things like that. And you know, we would go down there with a cane pole and a can of wiggle worms, we'd call them, and fish a half a day and love it just like it was a way of life with us. But seriously, that's where I first started fishing. And when I got a little older, a friend of mine, I'd always heard about the Georgia coast. I'd never fished here though, and a friend of mine though had been fishing down here quite some time with his parents. So I talked to him one day and he said, well, come go with us. So I went with him and just enjoyed it so much. We were fishing what we call the inside in the creeks and the rivers around the islands down around St. Catharines. And I really liked it. And in the meanwhile, I was a big ski nut, loved to water ski, so I said, you know, I ought to go ahead and get me a boat to ski out of, and I can fish out of it too, you know. And I had a daughter that was quite young at the time, just 2 or 3 years old, but I said, it won't be long before she'll be wanting to ski. So I went ahead and bought a boat. I bought a little 15-foot walk-through windshield boat with a Mercury engine on it. And I went down there to fish and not knowing anything about it. And back in those days, it seemed like we fished an awful lot on the beach. That's where most people fished. And I was sitting out there one day, and next thing I know, one of those big old breakers comes and just comes right over the front of the boat and just fills the entire boat full of water, and tackle boxes and everything goes floating around. I said, my gosh, so we jumped up there and pulled the anchor, you know, and went out there and pulled the plug out of the boat and tried to get the water out, and we were able to get it out, but that like scared me to death. That was quite a learning experience. But then I remember the first time, it wasn't too long after that my buddy that had fished down there said, I want to take you over to McQueen's Inlet, which is a little inlet right there in the middle of St. Catharines Island. So we took my boat, it was just the two of us, and it was kind of rough that day. It wasn't real rough. It wasn't rough at all now that I've become accustomed, but to me at that time it was very rough. And when we got there to the front of McQueen's and I saw those big breakers on that bar, I said, man, you have got to be crazy to even think about going in that place. I turned that boat around and went right back to the hill. I said, I'm never going to go around there again. And but anyway, I learned after a while you could get in there, and you know. But that was sort of my first fishing the Georgia coast. And that was back, gosh, I was in my early 20s at that time, so that was about 40 years ago, you know. The first time that I ever went to Gray's Reef, I was again in my 20s, and it was 3 of us guys, and we knew nothing about Gray's Reef. We'd never been there, had no clue, and we didn't have GPSs and all that kind of stuff in those days. But we had heard something about it. So we decided, heck, we'll go there, you know. So we looked on the nautical chart, and I saw the buoy out there, and I figured the bearing to it. And we took that boat and a compass and went out there. Well, we seemed like we had, you know, seemed like we went forever. And then finally we found it. And I remember distinctly, we didn't want to get too far away from the buoy because we figured we was lucky enough to find it to start with. And if we ever lost it, we probably couldn't ever find it again. But we fished around out there and we caught 120 black sea bass. Now that was the first time we ever went. Had no idea about ledges and all that kind of stuff existing out there. We were just fishing. We had some, I think we had squid. We bought a little pack of squid, and once we started catching a few, we'd cut up a few. But anyway, that was a long time ago. But since then, of course, I've become an avid offshore fisherman and inshore fisherman, and what I've seen is that we always can catch the limit on black sea bass at Gray's Reef. I mean, it's just unreal. We've never gone out there and said, well, gosh, where'd all the fish gone? It's always been just as good as what it was 40 years ago for us. And another thing that I'm finding is that, and this is amazing, all the years that I fished up till about 7 years ago, we never ever caught the first red snapper, not the first one. One day out at Gray's Reef there, we were fishing, and we got into a little group of red snapper, and we caught 7, me and another guy. Well, since then, we saw red snapper catches get more and more frequent with us. We'd catch more and more. Every trip we'd pick up 1 or 2, not just at Gray's Reef, but all around. Now, they're almost a bycatch. I mean, it's phenomenal. For example, the last trip out, which was about 5 weeks ago, 20 miles offshore, not Gray's Reef, but 20 miles offshore, we caught 7 red snapper. Wasn't even fishing for them. And, of course, they got a moratorium on them now. We can't keep them. Yeah, but yet we're catching more than we've ever caught. Not even trying to catch them now. But we go out to Gray's, or we go out to Middle Ground, or we go out to CCA, or any of those places now, and try to catch black sea bass, and we'll catch all the black sea bass we want, but we'll also catch a number of red snapper just fishing for them. And we're not talking about the snapper banks. We're talking about, real close in. Used to, we'd hardly ever catch a grouper. And please understand now, we do a lot of fishing besides just bottom fish out there. We do some trolling for kings and things, but a lot of times we go out and troll for kings, and then while we're there, we'll go and bottom fish some too, because it fills the day up. But we used to hardly ever catch a grouper, but they've become quite plentiful now to us. We catch them fairly regular. We catch them at Gray's. We catch them. Of course, the snapper banks, now we catch a lot of them there. There's just better habitat out there for them, I think. But we catch a good many grouper at Gray's, and we've caught some, I don't know if you know where the Middle Ground is, but we caught some of that area. Well, we still catch a lot of 10-inch ones, but we have to throw those back, of course. And what we find is that in the wintertime, it's no problem. Late fall, all the way through the winter, it's no problem catching the 12-inch black sea bass. In the heat of summer, though, you can't hardly catch the 12s. You catch all the 10s you want. But it seems like those 12-inch fish, I don't know, they either migrate in and out a little bit. But in close now, you have a hard time. Now, if you want to catch 12 and 13 and 14-inch black sea bass in the summertime, you got to go further out. For example, the snapper banks or the towers, R6 or R2 or some of those. But you can get them there. Less public access. It was easy to understand that in hunting. I mean, you got a few landowners got a lot of land, and people come in and rent up that land to hunt on, then they can hunt on it. Nobody else can. And we saw a lot of that back 20 years ago. We'd get people out of Florida coming up and renting up these farms in Georgia, and they'd rent 4, 5, 6 farms. And farms they'd say, I'd been hunting on all my life free. Now I'll go there and say, well, I'm sorry, Bing. They said, we've released our hunting rights to this law firm down in Florida. Well, you can't blame the farmer. But on the other hand, I don't have anywhere to hunt anymore either, see? And that started to happen a lot. Well, now you got the same thing in a sense, with fishing. You know, you got your farm ponds up there in inland from here, but they're all private unless you know those people. They're not going to let you fish there. And then you get the coast, again, public access is a problem. And so we need to have the access, but then we need to get these kids out, take them fishing, and let them see the real thing and not just read about it or play the game, the fishing game on the video.